Okay. I think we have everybody who's supposed to be here except Governor MEEHAN, who hopefully is here momentarily. So I welcome everybody. I hereby call this meeting to order. This is an open meeting of the Broadcasting Board of Governors. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Government in the Sunshine Act. The live webcast will also be available for later viewing on BBG website, www.bbg.gov. Today's meeting will include a deep dive on, as usual, on a BBG network. And typically we conducted these sessions at the network's headquarters. Because Radio Free Asia's offices are currently under renovation, today's deep dive on RFA is being held here at the Cohen Building in Washington, D.C., and thanks to Libby and her team for accommodating that. The board hopes to visit RFA headquarters in August for a meet and greet with the employees' dedicated and hardworking employees and for their famous world-renowned potluck lunch, right? So I'm looking forward to that. So that will be in August, so keep your appetites. Today's meeting will also include two panels. The first panel discussion, moderated by Director of Global Strategy Rob Bole, will provide an overview of the U.S. international media response to the crisis in Ukraine. And the second panel discussion, which I will moderate, will focus on the Internet anti-censorship programs at the BBG in order to inform the board and the public about the current state of play of these important and exciting programs. I also like to say, just ad-libbing a little bit from the agenda here, is that I was reading this morning about the trial in Egypt of the journalists on trial there, and it's just every day you see something around the world which reminds you that the press is far from free everywhere. They actually, according to the article, the prosecutor put up the video that they were being charged from, and it wasn't actually a video; it was just a canned video, and so they didn't even have the video that they were being charged with their crime for. So Egypt obviously has a long way to go, as well as some other places that we're working hard in. So anyway, as some of you know too well, our broadcast family has had a tragic loss since our last meeting. On March 22nd, while on his way to work, Dr. Mohammed Badawi Al-Waid Al-Shamari, Baghdad Bureau Chief of RFE-RL's Radio Free Iraq, was shot and killed at a security checkpoint near his office. This is a profound loss for RFE-RL and the community of independent media in Iraq, and for all of us as well. We extend our condolences to Al-Shamari's family, friends, and colleagues. The shooter in this case has been remanded to Iraq's Central Criminal Court for trial on murder charges. And I'd like to pause right now for a moment of silence in remembrance of Dr. Al-Shamari. Thank you, everybody. The BBG continually monitors threats to media freedom and to our journalists in particular, and this board makes a point at each meeting of recognizing the threats at each of our public meetings. We're becoming increasingly concerned about the situation in and around the Ukraine, and we're going to spend some time, as we talked about, on that later on this morning. Reporters from both VOA and RFE-RL have faced violence and threats in the course of their work. On March 1st, an RFE-RL correspondent was beaten and forced to kneel and kiss a Russian flag during a demonstration in Kharkiv, Ukraine. On March 17, RFE-RL Ukrainian service journalist Lev Kostek was leaving a reporting assignment at a Ukrainian military base in Crimea when he was approached by unidentified uniformed gunmen who handcuffed him, put a bag on his head, and forced him into the backseat of a car, and then drove him some distance to a field and deposited him there. Stek was not injured, but he was told not to return to Crimea again. On March 21, an RFE-RL journalist was severely beaten in Crimea by uniformed Russian soldiers, but is now safe. On March 22nd, VOA correspondent Daniel Scharf and local cameramen were accosted and assaulted by Russian forces in Crimea as they tried to cover a standoff in a military base. The Russian troops seized VOA's camera equipment and knocked the cameraman to the ground. And on March 23rd, several shots were fired into the apartment of an RFE-RL Ukrainian service journalist in Kyiv, Ukraine. Police are investigating this incident. And VOA stringer Jamie Detmer, who has been reporting for VOA from eastern Ukraine, has received anonymous phone messages warning that he would be killed. We strongly, as a board, condemn some such aggressive and lawless acts against our journalists. And as a board, we call for the end to this interference with the work of our journalists and for all parties involved to respect Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which proclaims everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression, the This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek and receive and impart information and ideas throughout any media and regardless of frontiers. Unfortunately, we've also seen troubling incidents in other countries within our broadcast regions. The Russian Information Agency has cut off all remaining radio transmissions by U.S. international media in Russia. This is a step in the wrong direction, continuing on a path that Russia has trod under Vladimir Putin's leadership for several years, restricting free speech, a fundamental value shared by many countries around the world. VOA's South Sudan Project Bureau Chief was picked up and detained for questioning by the national security officers of the South Sudan government. After 5.5 hours of questioning, he was released following a visit by a U.S. Embassy consular official to the National Security Services Office. Another South Sudan VOA reporter was detained by security forces, questioned about his work, and told that he cannot do any additional reporting without first getting their permission. A VOA stringer in Herat was detained by the campaign staff of a leading Afghan presidential candidate on March 11. The stringer was released about an hour later after local journalists intervened on his behalf. Adnan Khan, a VOA Diwa reporter in the Waziristan region of Pakistan, received a phone call on March 14 from someone who identified himself as Azam Tariq, a member of the Pakistani Taliban. The caller accused Adnan of working for spy agencies and warned him to stop reporting on the region, or he should be prepared to be tried by a Taliban court that would punish him for his reporting. Sorry about this long list, but obviously the world's getting worse here a bit. Taptig Faraduglu, a stringer for VOA's Azerbaijani service, was assaulted on February 21 while covering a student demonstration in Baku. The chief of the security force at Baku State University struck him and kicked him in an attempt to get him to stop recording video of security personnel attacking the demonstrators. The board's troubled by these attempts to stifle independent press and calls on local authorities to do more to support and protect all working journalists. And we cannot forget that Al-Hurra's Bashar Fahmy remains missing in Syria following an August 2012 reporting trip to Aleppo. As ever, I call for anyone with information about Bashar's whereabouts or well-being to come forward. I think this is a good tradition that we do at the beginning of the meetings, and you'd hope as the world becomes more free and press becomes more free, this list would become shorter. As you can see from the remarks this morning, unfortunately, the list is becoming longer, and particularly the events in Ukraine and Russia are troubling to the board and should be troubling to everybody. So now with that, let me turn to the business before this board today. On March 28th, the board received by email materials for the consent agenda, allowing sufficient time for all governors to review prior to this meeting. I did not receive any comments from the governors. There are 5 items for board consideration as part of the consent agenda today, including 2 resolutions that were considered last month by the advisory committee that will be submitted as part of our compliance response to the Office of Inspector General's 2013 inspection of the board. We're trying to go through that report and clear all the remaining items, and these two things in the consent agenda today are very important steps in doing that. And we also include in the consent agenda a resolution on the winners of the 2014 David Burke Distinguished Journalism Award. These awards recognize exceptional integrity, bravery, and originality in reporting. The 2014 Burke Award winners represent the very best of U.S. international media. These brave men and women come from each of the BBG networks and have tackled issues of critical importance in some of the most dangerous locations on Earth. We're going to present the 2014 Burke Awards at an upcoming event. At this time, I'd like to ask if any of the governors have comments on the consent agenda. Okay, does any governor wish to move for adoption of the consent agenda by the board? Governor MCCUE, working her microphone, has moved to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Much more cleanly, Governor Armstrong seconds the thing. Any objections? All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda is adopted. So we have a couple items here to go through this morning. The first of which, in March, the board established a special committee on Internet anti-censorship, which was created to establish clear program objectives and devise a process of utilizing IAC funds and set up straightforward processes for oversight and evaluation of IAC activities. The IAC committee, under the leadership of Governor Weinstein, met twice before the board meeting on April 4th and yesterday, April 10th, and I'd like to invite Governor Weinstein to report to the board. Ken. Take your time. And turn on your mic.
Okay, there I am. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your introduction. I want to add I'm honored to serve as chair of this special committee on Internet anti-censorship. You know, as your opening remarks mentioned, and the committee recognizes the importance of the impact of BBC-sponsored Internet Freedom Act initiatives which circumvent the actions of government who seek to withhold news and information from their citizens. It's because of these efforts and significant technological progress that's been made here that millions are now able to access that information. It's something I think we all can be proud of here at the BBG. It's also clear that Congress recognizes the importance of these efforts as indicated in its directive through the fiscal year 2014 omnibus to increase funding for IAC activities. With this mandated expansion of our IAC program funding, the board identified the need to set clear program objectives, set a clear process for utilizing the funds, establish a process for program oversight, and to create a process for measurement and evaluation. The IAC committee has convened twice since its inception to discuss and debate these issues. At our April 4th meeting, the committee reviewed the statutory requirements of the fiscal 2014 omnibus bill, considered various program administrative structures, and discussed the need for an appropriate oversight mechanism. We met yesterday and focused the discussion on how to spend the appropriated funds. And so, after careful consideration of all of these issues, and I want to thank the staff and the other governors and also Chairman Schell for his input yesterday, we have come up with the following recommendations, and these I will read verbatim. The current approach to allocating funds for IAC activities among BBG-sponsored entities shall remain the same, and the spend plan that is submitted to Congress shall reflect an allocation of half of the $25.5 million in FY 2014 funds to the Technology, Services, and Innovation Division of the IBB, TSI, and the other half by means of a grant amendment to Radio Free Asia Incorporated. The BBG should endeavor to obligate IAC program funds provided to TSI and RFA by the end of fiscal year 2014. The interim management team we recommend be directed to coordinate and deconflict the proposed spend plan prior to its submission to Congress with the Department of State and the USAID as required by the Act. TSI and RFA be directed, respectively, to submit to the IAC committee and the interim management team detailed implementation plans and documentation demonstrating responsible and effective use of the IAC funds. And finally, IAC program funds provided to TSI and RFA should be subject to appropriate oversight protocols and procedures in accordance with current law and regulation to be developed henceforth by the IAC committee. Those are the decisions. Great.
Thank you, Governor Weinstein. So just a couple comments before I call for a vote on this resolution. Number one, a lot of what the BBG does is not visible to the public. We do a lot of great reporting and journalism that's sometimes visible. The stuff that's being done on internet freedom is the least visible because it's kind of beneath the surface, but in some ways it's just as important, if not more important. So I want to commend Libby Liu at RFA and Andre Mendez here at BBG for their outstanding work here. And I think Congress, we should all be excited and proud that Congress has recognized this good work by dramatically increasing the funds that we have. And it's a credit to both Libby and Andre also that when we got together to decide how to allocate the funds to a entity, all of our entities were happy with this, at the moment, this 50-50 split between federal and non-federal. It seems to be working quite well, and we're doing a lot of good stuff. And I'm very excited for all of you to see that in the panel in a couple hours when we go through that. So that's great. And I think we also have a responsibility as a board as the funding increases to make sure that we put appropriate mechanisms in place as Governor Weinstein said, to responsibly spend this money. And that's the second part of the resolution is as we go forward and spend it, we need to make sure that we're doing so responsibly and with careful procedures to make sure we know where the money's going and how it's being spent and how well it's being spent. So with that, are there any comments or on the resolution that's been proposed by Governor Weinstein? Okay, I move we adopt the resolution. Is there a second? Second, Governor MCCUE. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The resolution carries, and thank you, Governor Weinstein, and the rest of the committee for your work on this. The committee is not over, though, because the committee is also charged with now going and putting together the compliance plan. So you're not released from your work, Governor Weinstein. Welcome, Governor Meehan. The broadcasting to Iran, for our second item here, is a strategic priority of the United States and the Broadcasting Board of Governors. The Iranian government continues its complete control of domestic media and remains universally hostile towards foreign media outlets, including U.S. international media networks. Because of this important issue, earlier this year, the board asked for a comprehensive review of U.S. international media broadcasting to Iran in order to produce recommendations about a new strategy, including content and delivery tactics and organization structure to reach audiences in Iran. This effort has been led by Rob Bole and Jeff Trimble and the Global Strategy Team, and has included work by a number of individuals within U.S. international media. The review has gathered and evaluated a wide variety of input and perspectives on U.S. international media programming to Iran, and I want to thank all of those who have participated at VOA, RFERL, and the IBB. It's of critical importance that we get our strategy for this strategic country correct. So I'd like to ask Rob Bole, Director of Global Strategy, to give us a brief update on this effort. Rob?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you said, I want to thank right off the top VOA and RFERL for participating and working with us so closely. It's been actually a real pleasure. As you know, the board directed us to look at our own strategy. And before I go into some of the highlights of it, I want to say that, that we are in a position of good position, I'd say, a good strength. We have the strongest reach that we've ever had, according to our research through a recent survey that was completed in December and in January. VOA and FARDA combined, in face of an explosion of new competitors in the marketplace in Iran, have the largest audience, again, according to our research, than any other international broadcaster. This is partially due by the fine journalism practiced by both entities, Radio FARDA reaching on digital and radio platforms, VOA on digital and television platforms. Having this ability of doing much better than we have in the past and continuing to build on strength allows us an opportunity to think about the future in a way that's a smart time. So our strategy framework that we're looking at and presenting to the board is focused on presenting a single stream, a single set of goals, and a single set of performance indicators for the country of Iran, no matter who's doing the work. So we'll start with looking at what the goals are for U.S. international media in Iran and what is the level of performance that we expect in that country moving forward by both VOA, Persia, and FARDA. And then our framework also suggests that we focus on a single stream, meaning a single television, satellite stream, a single audio, radio stream, and a single digital strategy. At this point, we're having to take from this framework and move into looking at the operational issues and going in deeply into how does this work. We have good collaboration already happening. VOA and FARDA have collaborated on taking FARDA's Breakfast with News program and putting it onto the satellite stream. VOA regularly has FARDA journalists on its air. So we're starting to see the collaboration that is necessary for the future, but we need to go deeper into how those operational issues work. So we're at good stage of suggesting to the board we are ready to take the next step moving forward, and we have a good framework that I think everyone including FARDA and VOA, agreed to as a framework for moving forward.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks for all the work here that we've done. The board recently added this discussion item to the agenda today to provide a clear direction following this report of Rob and the strategy team. And I believe we have two resolutions that have been submitted today. I know we have two resolutions that have been submitted today. So why don't we quickly discuss both resolutions, and let's start with Governor Meehan, if you want to introduce your resolution and talk a bit about it and the rationale.
Thanks, Jeff. So in 2007, I was fortunate to be nominated by then President Bush to come to this board. And then in 3 years later, we finally got a vote But during the course of that time, during my nomination process and trips to Capitol Hill, the number one issue that members of the Senate and their staffs asked me about for my nomination was Iran. The history and the troubles with the VOA Persian news service go back decades, long before anybody around this table was working on them. I just sit here as a person who came to the board in 2010. Then Chairman Isaacson sat in Jeff's chair and said a very similar speech to what you just said this morning, that there's a very important place in the world. Humbled to be on a board with a man who's lived there and knows more and has forgotten more about where we are in Iran than anybody that I know and probably anybody in U.S. government. I was late today because I was on the phone with Alan Iyer to check some of the reporting that the staff had with us yesterday, just to make sure, because I had gone to visit him in 2012 to learn from him what his thoughts, since he spends every single day following the Iranian media and being on our media. So I was just learning a little bit more, and I'll get into a little bit more of that comments later. Then we had a member of the board, Anders Wimbush, who was a former bureau head for Radio Liberty back in the day before he got to the board. And Walter Isaacson asked him to write us a report. So he spent 3 months studying it, and he actually had worked in the place. And he presented a 10-page report to the board, and I shared that with all of you last summer when you all got to the board. His recommendation at the time was that we could continue the amount of hours that we broadcast in Iran for less money. And given the budget climate we faced in 2010 and every year since, that sounded like good news to us. Clearly, there were a bunch of challenges inside of that, but some cost savings could be had while not reducing the amount of time that we broadcast to Iran through VOA or through RFE. So in 2012, the board had a robust conversation, and we submitted a budget to save some of that money. The processes worked such that the savings weren't going to be realized in 2012. But in this year's budget, the 2015 budget, some of those savings were realized in the OMB budget. There was $17 million. The Persia service is one that we spend the second most amount of money on after Cuba. And so it's one that it is a priority for the agency, always has been. And the question is, before us as a board, and we talked about this last night, and we've been talking about it over time, do we want to continue to make small incremental changes, or should we come up with a new approach? Since that 2012, we've received OIG reports. We've received CBO reports. We've been asked as an agency to consolidate our operations and realize cost savings where possible. There's been efforts, few successes where we've put administrative costs together to save some of the taxpayers' money there. But we really haven't been able to move the needle very fast, given sort of the structure of how the different networks operate. When we have 57 who operate in the same countries, VOA has 57, 43 that have surrogate operations that also happen in those countries. So we received strong instructions prior to many of you coming on the board that we should be moving in this direction if possible. And I agree, we should be doing it if possible. And there are a lot of complicated laws and a lot of work that it would take. So the struggle that I have is my goddaughter turned 18 this morning, and I think if she's on this board in 30 years from now, they'll be having a similar conversation. So why wouldn't we start today to try to figure out a better way to do this? Alan Iyer made a remark to me this morning. He said the Chinese say the best time to plant a tree is 100 years ago, and the next best time is today. And so that's why I want to offer my resolution today to see if we can put us on a path. I think it meets a lot of our needs. I'm not 100% sold that this should work, but given, I believe that we, and the other thing that I don't bring to the table, years of the diplomatic effort of Ambassador Crocker. I don't work in the Hollywood media business and run media companies. But yesterday when we talked about this, we all came to an agreement that one person should be in charge, right? That having a single TV stream and a single radio stream and a single digital stream is what we do now. It's VOA Persia on the TV, it's FARDA on the radio, and then digital. Each side does a little bit of both. And that's an incremental improvement, and you can vote to do that, and that'll be fine. But I think that this is one of the examples of how this agency, and if I'm here 5 more minutes or 5 more years, I'll be here chipping away at this, that we should try. And so I know the chairman has a resolution that wants to look at this. I think there are improvements. I mean, when you all got here, you said, look, lots going on, give us a chance to digest. Sure. The end of last year, I asked the staff to come up with a resolution. I wanted to offer it at the December board meeting. And then Dick Lobo resigns, and we have an interim management team. Okay, let's wait till February. We get to February, lots on the plate, not saying it's not. We're all part-timers. I know that's hard. But I didn't get to offer it in February. I appreciate you putting the resolution on Monday, but it wasn't on the docket otherwise. And so, like I said, if I'm only here for one more day, I'm going to feel better if we all have a chance to talk really about what we're trying to get done there and what direction. I don't think it's going to happen in a day, but if we don't start today, I don't think we make the improvement. I know that the resolution is dated and it needs to have some improvements on the date because it said by February the 14th. Okay, let's make that change. I know I spoke to Ambassador Crocker, and I'm happy to have a conversation about what timeline people are more comfortable with, and I'm happy to put that date into the resolution. But I'm not sure that this is a binary choice, the Shell resolution or the MEEHAN resolution. I think there's probably a third way is the best way. And I also am very sympathetic to the staff's got a ton on their plate. We're a small agency, lots moving on, vital parts of the world. It's a media business. Nobody would start a media business and not be able to have the nimbleness to hire and fire what they need in any given time. I mean, we've set up a structure that this device will be gone in 5 years, but everybody that goes through the youth bulge in Iran and all the other places in the world we care about are all going to get their news from here. And if we don't start planning this today, and we had this conversation 4 years ago holding up our cell phones. So, you know, and some efforts have been made. Rob and the team have done unbelievable work with the small resources that we've been giving them. But there's no more important place, given the amount of money this agency spends in Iran, than this place. And I think this, and we have great resources. I agree. FARDA is a very well recognized effort there. The work, the Persian network. Before even David Answer's predecessor sat here and told us about all the management challenges that we face with PNED. So you know, everybody gets inherited a bad hand. And what I'm saying today is we should not keep inheriting bad hands. We should do the best we can with the resources that we have. And I just believe we need to have a bolder direction.
Thank you, Michael. Just to be clear, before I go to the second resolution, the resolution that Michael is offering, Governor Meehan is offering, basically says that we should the management team should put together a plan to transition all Iranian all responsibility for Iranian broadcast and information to RFERL, out from its current situation where we have 2 different agencies broadcasting into Iran. Correct.
Right. So it's similar to the path that 10 years ago the board had the situation in the Middle East, and VOA Arabic also had some challenges managerially-wise and running a network out of a federal agency. And that board then decided, and the Congress and the President concurred, to create the Middle East Broadcasting Network. And today, 10 years later, I was in Cairo in December. We were a reliable news source in the middle of all of the activities going on in downtown Cairo. People were watching us. And I'd like to be in that position 10 years from now if the situation changes in Iran, we're that type of source of news and information. But that was 10 years ago, and it took 10 years. And Brian's here, and he's been there all the time. The staff there, it's a long road, and it's hard to do. So yes, I think the board has a model, and the staff recommended the model on Iran, and I'd like to put that forward.
Okay, so the one change I think that needs to be made to the resolution that the board members should have in front of them is the resolution directs management to present a transition plan to the board. It's currently in there as February 2014, which obviously doesn't work. So June 2014, is that the appropriate date?
June would be great to revisit or have them report back of options.
June 2014. So the resolution that you should have before you, the only amendment is the top of the second page, which the date by which the management team comes back with a plan should be amended from February 2014 to June 2014.
So just to clarify, Michael, your resolution, you're basically just asking for a plan.
a plan to. Well, I could make it much
Not a
tighter.
plan-
I can
not a
make it
plan
much
on
tighter.
which something would be executed, just a plan.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the chance to have the staff come back with a plan. And the plan that they came back with yesterday is not enough for me. That's why I wanted to still offer the resolution. So I'm happy to make that tighter language, Susan, but I'm also willing to give
No,
the
I just
staff
wanted
options
to-
to bring to us,
I
and then
just
we
wanted
could
to
have
clarify
a
that.
vote in June then on a tighter. But yes, this resolution asks for a plan to merge the two, because this plan that they presented was not a merger plan. This plan was to make improvements along singular lines.
But I think the one thing that's important, and then I know Chairman Shell, I'll turn it over to you, about what Rob put forward is that it's happening now, right? It's not a plan, it's what you're executing on right now.
Correct. There's a lot of improvements going on right now, and I would say that I would agree with Governor Meehan. We didn't come to the table with a plan of action. There's the operational details of doing either of these resolutions is intense, and so the question is, from what we said, is a framework of how do we bring these two strengths together in a much more collaborative fashion. And we have to work through the operational details next, and we'd come back with a plan as directed by either resolution.
Okay, I'm just reading the resolution, and I have to say I'm confused a little bit. So maybe Paul or somebody could explain, because the resolution, as submitted, says that that all Persian language news and information programming activities sponsored by BBG shall be undertaken solely by RFE-RL through Radio Farda at a level determined by the board. The BBG will cease all Persian language broadcasting through VOA's PNN service, and the grant for RFE-RL will be increased to fund this. And then the second part of the resolution says that that's first part of the resolution. That's pretty clear. The second part says the board, the management team should come back with a plan for the board of how to do this. And the third part of the resolution says that we also need to prepare a programming change plan for Congress to let Congress know that we're changing the funding. So it's not just, I'm just, as written, this is not, Susan, I believe, and Paul should jump in as you just characterize it. I actually think this is a resolution to do this. Paul, can you clarify that for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, your reading is correct. This resolution would have the effect of mandating that the Persian language news and information program would be transferred from the agency to RFE-RL, and then it would just be a matter of coming back with a transition plan for how to do that. So that would, and the staff would be directed to prepare reprogramming notices.
And I would guess that when the plan comes back, if we don't like the plan as a board, we can always reverse our decision to do it. So,
Sure.
But this says we're going to do it, right? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Let me transition to the second resolution, since they're different resolutions. And let me just say for a second, all of this is coming from a good place. Governor Meehan and I both believe strongly that Iran is critical and strategic to this board and to this country, and that BBG has to play a very active role in Iran going forward. And we just disagree a little bit in approach and timing of approach, I think, and that's why we have the two resolutions here. My resolution that I'm offering basically adopts the plan that Rob Bole and Jeff Trimble have recommended, which is what I would call, even though that's not the name of it, the harmonization plan. It's basically, as opposed to transitioning all the Iranian broadcasts from one to one agency or another with one boss, as Governor Meehan says, we work to try to find a harmonization plan where both VOA and RFE-RL continue to broadcast into Iran, and we continue the work of trying to figure out a plan of how to do this. I will say that I also believe, and I said yesterday when we were being briefed on this, that I believe that there should be one boss. So I am, that part of the plan does trouble me. But the flip side is the reason for offering this competing resolution are as followed for me. Number one, the numbers that we saw yesterday show that VOA actually has far greater reach in Iran than Radio Farda does. And that's not saying that both aren't doing an excellent job, but it seems to me that with VOA making progress, it appears by the numbers in Iran, to then take that and rip it away from them and transition that to responsibility. VOA could still provide programming and all that, but responsibility to somebody else, to me, troubles me a little bit, because it's counter to the numbers and counter to the analysis we've seen. The second thing is we asked our management troika to come up with a plan. They did a lot of work and came back with a plan. I think the plan is sensible. If the plan had said something else, I would be probably preparing another resolution today. But the plan said, let's try to figure out a way to harmonize the two services in Iran and see if we can find a way to work. And I think, in my view, we deserve to try that plan. It seems like a sensible plan. And in fact, if the plan works, there are a number of other territories around the world where we have a number of our services broadcasting into the same place, which this could serve as a model for me on how to harmonize those places. So I'm eager to see if this harmonization could work. And three, I am, and no disrespect to the great interim leaders for RFERL who are doing a wonderful job since Kevin Close's resignation, but we do have an interim team running RFERL, and I'm a little troubled about handing this huge, complicated transition to them in the midst of an interim team when we're searching for a permanent leader of that organization. So my resolution basically directs management to proceed with the plan that Rob outlined, which is to work for a harmonization between the two services. I would agree with Michael, just as he doesn't know if his plan is going to work. I don't know if this plan is going to work, and I think the board reserves the right always to come back, whichever one of these two resolutions we work for, and come back and revisit that. But I think, in my view, this is a more sensible way for the board to proceed as opposed to diving into the pool and transitioning to one agency. So with that, let me open it up. Any other governors that have questions or comments on either one of these resolutions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Governor Meehan has pointed out, I have a deep interest and a certain amount of experience in that part of the world, including in Iran and with Iranians. And I came on this board last summer with deep concerns over how well our Farsi language services were performing. Because as both the chairman and Governor Meehan have pointed out, this is a strategically critical country for U.S. interests, and we've got to get it right. So in my early weeks, I asked colleagues who follow Iran for the U.S. government, our Iran watching team. Governor Meehan spoke this morning to arguably the most accomplished among them. And what I got back was frankly not very encouraging at all. But against that backdrop, I was impressed by the work that Rob Bole and Jeff Trimble, along with VOA and RFERL, have done in the intervening months. As Rob himself acknowledges, that is only part of the road. You've got the framework, but it would have to be operationalized. So where I come down on this is, first, we have to do a better job. Second, I think the work that you have undertaken so far provides the potential for that. So my position would be for the team to continue its work, to move from a framework to an operational approach. In other words, fairly much along the lines of the chairman's resolution. But, you know, I don't want your goddaughter to be sitting here in 40 years. So, you know, I would propose that we authorize the team to continue, given the promising start you've made. And I see more promise here, although by no means fully realized, and I think we have seen on the Persian service in a very long time. I think you should have the chance to carry it the next step toward it's early operationalization. But I think we have to set limits here, and I would want by our next board meeting in June to have an update on where you have been able to get on the operational level, and with what results. And again, I appreciate not only that the governors are in touch with some of our Iran watchers, but that that you are as well. These are the people who are right on the cutting edge, and getting their input and their evaluation is vital to us, and I would urge that continue. So in essence, I believe that we should extend your mandate, but then relook in June. And I would say that while I hope what you are about and what the chairman's resolution captures is successful, that if it is not, if we don't have significant operational progress by June, that we may then be required to more dramatic measures, such as Governor Meehan proposes. So I see a sequencing here with, again, the hope that Plan A succeeds, but if it doesn't, we've got a Plan B.
Governor MCCUE?
Yeah, first of all, Chairman Schell, I want to reinforce what you said. I think we all share the same goal here. It's about how we get there. And I would say that what Rob Bole put forward yesterday, what he presented to us, was impressive. And I don't think it was small or incremental. I think it's what we've all been trying to work toward, at least, Michael, since we've been on the board and since we've joined our new colleagues. And I was impressed with that collaboration between FARDA and VOA. And I agree with Ambassador Crocker, who I don't think anyone knows better what's going to work or what is working in the region than Ambassador Crocker, that we should allow that to proceed. So I support your amendment, and I agree we need to set some timelines to reevaluate in a hard-headed way and, reevaluate at that time. But let's see how it's working. I think it is progress, and it's hard getting these major networks to communicate and create a single stream, but I'm hopeful.
Thank you, Governor MCCUE. Governor Weinstein or Governor Armstrong, do you guys have any comments?
No, I'm very much. I was at one point in favor of the RFE plan. This, as the discussion proceeds, I think this approach makes more sense to me. And one of the things I'm wondering about is when the RFE plan was originally proposed, was this kind of harmonization envisaged at all, or is that was it how much was it considered, or was it simply not a possibility back in 2011?
So there have been 4 presidents of RFE, RL, and 5 management structures in the last 4 years. And so each different president might have had a slightly different approach to this. So it's been hard to negotiate that. It was hopeful that Kevin and David, and now John and David, could work on this harmonization. But the nature of the beast is these positions tend to change over every year or two. And so some of the individuals work better. The RFE has been a radio function, and VOA has been a TV function. There's 108 contractors according to the report we have here, 72 full-time employees, $16 million. The chairman noted that TV. The FARDA has a great news gathering reputation, but it is radio. There are limits to radio's reach compared to television's reach. Even bad TV has a bigger audience than the best radio. So some of it's the nature of the distribution system. And some of it's the funding. I mean, RFE is doing their work on $6.97 million with 54 people in Prague and 4 people in Washington. So, but those companies have a responsibility to defend their companies. We are board members of all their boards, and we have to come to and we have to help the staff get to a place. So if this is the page that you are referring to, can we submit that to the record as the goals? This is what the plan will feature that to bring back to us. Appendix 5 from the board report, the plan will feature the harmonizing efforts and all that. Can we at least put that on the record so we can have something to measure this with in June?
Yeah, I'm happy to have that on the record as part of the resolution.
Thank you, Chairman. The advantage of going last is that I can associate myself with each of the comments that went before.
Well, we still have Governor Stengel if he wants to make a comment, so you're second to last, but go ahead.
So I'd like to emphasize actually a point that Governor Meehan made just now, and that is VOA has the TV, and this is part of the lift of merging the two that I think Ambassador Crocker is part of Ambassador Crocker's comments, and if not, that'll be my differentiation there. And I'm sure it's part of it, and that is it's a heavy lift to make this merge. And this plan appears to be a good plan, which is a harmonization of our networks, which is an essential trajectory we need to be on, and it could be a good practice here. So it's a skill set. If we find that, along with Governor Meehan and what Governor MCCUE said, if we find this is failing and we can't wait long, so I like the idea of a 60-day window, then we start to push that transition, and hopefully by then we'll be further along the process, already have a process, because the interim of a new leader at RFE, because Nenad and John are doing a great job, but as Chairman said, it's an interim team. So I think this is the idea of going along with this fine plan that Rob and Jeff Trimble put together is a great idea, bearing in mind that it may fail and then we do something else. So those are my comments.
Governor Stengel. Governor Stengel, do you have any comments to add? I don't know if you're still on the phone here. It's fumbling for the mute button, I guess. Okay, Rick, you can jump in later if you have any.
Hear me?
Oh yeah, go ahead,
Yes.
Rick. Yeah.
No, I don't have any comments to add.
Perfect. Thank you. So I asked Paul KOLLMER-DORSEY to look back and say when the last time this board actually voted on competing resolutions, and I don't think there's a time, certainly in the last decade, that the board has. So let me explain how this is going to work, and I'll look down to Paul, who can correct me if I get this wrong. So we have two resolutions on the that we haven't moved for either of them yet. They're going to be moved to be a vote. The first resolution, which we will nickname the MEEHAN resolution, was submitted to both the resolutions. By the way, were submitted to the board several days ago, and the first resolution, as submitted, will be amended, as I mentioned before, with the February 2014 date being changed to June 2014. So that's amendment number one, and that is the amendment to move all broadcasting it to Iran to the responsibility of RFERL. The second amendment, which we will nickname the Shell Amendment, I don't think needs an amendment, needs any amendments to the resolution, Governor Crocker, because I think right at the end of it, it says that that Rob and Jeff are supposed to come back at the next board meeting with a report. And what I would say is, per Michael's recommendation, we will submit the page from the board book that lays out the harmonization principles as an appendix to that resolution. So we have guideposts to kind of guide that discussion. I think that's a good offering, and that'll also be in June. So we're going to vote first on the MEEHAN resolution as amended, assuming somebody moves and seconds it. Then we're going to vote for the Shell resolution. If neither pass, then we will continue on as we do as a board with no resolutions, continue to work on Iran. If both pass, then I will throw up my hands and look at Paul and ask him what we should do. So why don't we vote, and then we will see what we do. So first of all, is there a motion for the MEEHAN resolution as amended?
Well, first, let me congratulate the chairman for his willingness to have a vote. one of the things that on the last board Susan and I struggled with was let majority rule and let's put something on the table. And also, since we're part-timers and walk out of this building and come back in 30 days, it's nice to leave the staff with some direction that's open in public. So I appreciate your willingness to have the vote. I do move my resolution as amended with the date of the June return.
And I'm going to second it from my chair. So is there any further discussion on the MEEHAN resolution, resolution number 1? No. All those in favor? Let's actually, since we have 2 amendments, two resolutions, let's not do this by voice vote. Can we go around and vote on it? Paul, is that appropriate? So let's start Governor MCCUE.
I vote no on the MEEHAN amendment.
Governor Crocker.
I vote no on the MEEHAN resolution.
Or resolution, sorry.
Governor Weinstein.
I vote no on the MEEHAN resolution.
Governor Meehan.
I vote yes.
Sorry.
Governor Armstrong.
I vote no.
Governor Stengel.
I also vote no.
And Governor Shell, I vote no. So the amendment fails, or the resolution fails, sorry. Let's now move. I move that we, well, let me actually ask if there's any actually, I move that we move to a vote on resolution number 2, the Shell resolution. Is there a second? Wait, pause for a second. Paul?
Just a point of clarification. And this deals with Governor Meehan's proposed amendment. The resolution says attaches final USIM Iran strategy report, which is behind tab 1 in your briefing books, and that has appended to it Appendix 5.
So we don't need to amend it at all.
To amend it, it's already in this report.
Okay,
so it doesn't need to be amended.
And it also calls for the group to come back at the next board meeting with the report. So
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Point of
go ahead.
clarification: Does the board book reports are available to the public?
Well, when it's attached to the resolution, it will be available to the public.
Okay, great.
Great. Thank you, Paul, for the clarification. So I move that we adopt the resolution, no amendment necessary, so as submitted to the board. Is there a second? The Shell resolution. Seconded by Governor MCCUE. And let's go around. Governor MCCUE, how do you vote on resolution number 2?
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Governor Weinstein?
Yes.
Governor Meehan?
It has a June 14th, 2014 come back to the board with a report?
It says next plenary board meeting, which would be in June, yeah.
I vote yes.
Okay.
I vote yes.
Governor Stengel?
Yes.
And Governor Shell, I vote yes. So the resolution carries. Thankfully, they don't both carry. And I would like to actually jump in and also second what Michael said before. This board, we all want the same things. It's totally fine to have different votes on different things with not unanimous votes. If we're serious about what we're doing our job, then we're going to have disagreements on how to carry it out, and I think this is how it should work. So I congratulate Governor Meehan on this and the rest of the board for having this process. I think it was good. And Rob Bole, you're now on the clock to come back in 2 months with a report on how to do this and how it's going.
Yes, sir.
Could I just
Go ahead, Michael, yeah.
So I did at the beginning of my remarks say that there was 2 resolutions, but there may be a third way to do this. I mean, you know, I take to heart our comments we had at our discussions yesterday that, you know, we are capable of bringing in outside folks to take on big, heavy lifts because, you know, Rob had a full-time day job before he became interim management. So did Susie, so did Andre, and those processes were working really well, and they've taken on a lot of responsibility, and they're to be commended. But I think that we as a board need to think about if we need to bring other resources to help people achieve some of these important things, because it is important for us and to move in a timely fashion to get some additional capabilities. I don't have any ideas. I'm open to them, but maybe that is one option, that maybe all the resources that can help us aren't physically on our payroll right now.
I think that's a good suggestion, and Rob, you should talk to Governor Meehan and others about that if there's ways to bring in additional resources.
Absolutely.
Okay? Let's move on here. I want one other thing before we move on to the public comments. So the board, as everybody knows, the board has a committee on shortwave, and that committee, even though we have no report at the board today, is doing a lot of work under the leadership of Governor Armstrong And we expect at the next board meeting in Miami in June to have a report from that committee and their important work on that. And Governor Armstrong also, in his spare time, has been working with Rob Bole to reconsider and sharpen the overall strategy for our organization, which we think needs a refresh. And so I wanted to ask Matt to say a couple brief words about this process.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, even though the Shortwave Committee doesn't have a report now, there is a lot of work that is going on behind the scenes, so that the Advisory Committee will have before the next Advisory Committee, we will have a draft for the committee to review, the Shortwave Committee to review. I'm sorry, I said Advisory Committee. For the next Shortwave Committee, you'll have a draft to review. With regard to the updated strategy, thank you. Yes, Rob and myself were working on updating the strategy. It's really important to consider that we're integrating and coordinating the inputs as well, so that includes advising, participating in the language service review process. So, for example, it's not just green light, red light on something, but trajectories, so to better inform the agency, inform the networks, so that we may better inform the Congress, the White House, the State Department, et cetera, as well as get inputs from there. So that we also have greater awareness and heads up. Also, part of the strategy is looking at how do we utilize the skills and expertise within our networks to, again, better utilize and provide awareness. So this will go into also how the networks work together, because this is not a one language, one region, one service type of environment anymore. The Ukraine is an example of that, and we have plenty of other examples where there are going to be multiple languages, multiple regions, multiple audiences that are one particular area. So it's a dynamic place that we need to update and refresh the way we approach. And if I might add one other comment that's unrelated to that.
Sure.
So as board liaison, I work with the so-called Troika, which is Andre, I missed him somewhere. He's here somewhere. There he is. Andre and Rob and Susie. And just as a comment, Governor Meehan made just a moment ago about how there was a day job, I'd like to remind those that may not see it, but the Troika have several day jobs right now. They're working at 200 or 300%, which is a very difficult and challenging time, and I'd like to express my personal appreciation at how hard they're working and the frustration I feel when I get a highly competent and amazing email late night on Saturday or Sunday, and or late night during the week, and I just, they are working extremely hard to help this agency move along and advance in this very difficult time. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, and it's a pleasure working with you all. And I am trying my best to make your lives easier. So,
well, Governor, I just want to point out that we respond to your emails Sunday morning.
I want to thank you, Matt, for those comments, and I want to second those. And I know I probably speak for the rest of the board here that we couldn't be more pleased with how this Troika is operating, and it gives me a lot of optimism about not just them, but the rest of the staff that is below them. We have a lot of good, dedicated people working very hard across the agency, and the example that the three of you are setting in both your hard work and your competence is really noticed and appreciated by the board. And, in adopting that previous resolution, one of the things that I'm hopeful for is this can create a structure where we can find a way to harmonize, in places, because we have been directed to decrease duplication and get our networks working together and dovetail that with the strategy for the organization. And I think even though it is an interim team and we are eager to get a CEO in place to run this organization, I think the board, I speak for Matt and the rest of the board in the sense that we couldn't be more pleased with your work so far. So thank you very much for all the hard work, the three of you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out on behalf of, and I think I can speak for Rob and Susie on this one, that all of our three spouses are delighted with this arrangement as well.
Okay, so let's move on to the public comment portion of our meeting. Members of the public who register to attend our open meetings have the opportunity to request a chance to speak up to 3 minutes. I would like to mention that the meeting, not only can the public come here to this meeting, but they can watch it on the web. There were times when I was a nominee that I was virtually the only one watching the webcast, and I knew that because when it didn't work, I called the agency and they fixed it for me. And our ratings are up. We're not doing as well as some of the networks are doing in some of our territories, but more people are watching this board telecast, which I think is very important because the work we do should be in the public, like the journalism that our organizations do that we're so proud of. So we have several members of the public here today, one of whom is registered to speak. Ann Noonan, would you please come forward to the table, introduce yourself, and make your comments, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Ann Noonan, and I'm the Executive Director of the Committee for U.S. International Broadcasting. CUSIB is an all-volunteer organization. A recent OIG report shows that Voice of America reaches only 0.1% of Russian onlines. Giving up VOA radio and satellite television to Russia in 2008 was a mistake, especially since an AM medium wave transmitter in Lithuania could have been used for both VOA and Radio Liberty to broadcast to audiences, including those with car radios in European Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. CUSIB does not believe for a moment that BBG can only have and can only afford one program delivery strategy. It should be a truly multimedia strategy, combining internet, radio, and in some cases, satellite television. The main reason that I'm here today, however, is to discuss the BBG's proposed budget cuts and their impact on the operations and the missions of the various entities that exist under the umbrella of the BBG. CUSIB is relieved that during the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, there are no projected cuts in the BBG's 2015 budget for Chinese and Tibetan services, as there had been in previous years. We applaud RFA's decision to use some of its very limited resources to host a weekly program titled Letters from Prison. This program will be invaluable. I also want to mention that the news about the proposed elimination of Voice of America's Albanian and other services to the Balkans in the BBG's 2015 budget brought an immediate response from leaders in the Albanian community, especially New York State Assemblyman Mark Jonai. I was CC'd in a letter from Assemblyman Jonai directed to BBG Chair Jeff Shell, stating his grave concern about the elimination of these VOA services. His letter states, quote, "The root of some of the past bloody conflicts in the Balkans can be attributed to disinformation or suppression of information." His letter states that Russia has been manipulating news in the Balkans. Quote, "In order to protect and further the interests of the United States, Voice of America should continue to be a source of information for all people in this region," New York Assemblyman Jonai wrote. I'd also like to call your attention to a VOA production for TV stations in Pakistan of a zombie video showing a bloodthirsty Uncle Sam zombie character. Pakistan is a troubled area of the world, and videos like this one can demean and belittle VOA and its mission. We do not fault the actual journalists who obviously received little guidance or direction, but we do believe that in a well-run organization, this would never have happened. CUSIB believes that top VOA and IBB executives all share responsibility for this farce and should not blame those below them as they have a habit of doing. We are disturbed that experienced and talented VOA correspondents are leaving because they feel abused. We are hopeful that when a CEO is finally hired by the BBG board, someone with good political sense who knows and understands the organization and its missions, problems of this magnitude may no longer exist. CUSIB remains troubled by VOA's online remapping of Crimea to be officially located outside of Ukraine. We're relieved that after a media report, VOA corrected its controversial map. Again, this incident demonstrates the need for much better management. We are also troubled by IBB's practice of including known U.S. domestic internet traffic in its online audience reach metrics. Since in some cases, U.S. online traffic can be over 60% This practice misleads BBG members, members of Congress, and the U.S. public. But what I hope and pray the most is that my appearance here today will prompt a further review by the board that would result in curtailing management costs and preserving the actual news reporting and broadcasting parts of the budget. Why should the largest portion, 34% of the BBG budget, be devoted to support services, bureaucracy, and management, and IBB should increase its staff by 37% in the last 7 years while proposing cuts and reducing numerous programming? There is something wrong with this picture. Top-heavy management course strip resources from the ground troops of journalists who deliver the information that is mandated by the mission of all the BBG news services. We will continue to provide our input as taxpayers, concerned citizens, journalists, and media-free advocates. And if we receive the information we need and request, we will ask Congress for more money for BBG's pure and noble mission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. And I also encourage in the future other members of the public to come speak to us because it's important that we hear from you. So we're way behind. We're 20 minutes behind, as Susie has reminded me repeatedly. So we're going to take a quick break here to prepare the room for the RFA presentation. And I would urge governors to stay close so that right when we're ready, we can go right into it. So we'll be back in a couple minutes.